Hello, welcome to Thursdays at the Museum. I'm Ian Rapnicki from the DIA. Today we'll visit the studio of artist Mario Alberto Martinez Mendez, and he will discuss the Mexican folk art known as Alebrijes. Joining him in conversation will be DIA studio coordinator Zach Freeling, who will also field audience questions throughout the hour. So if you're watching on YouTube, just be sure that you're logged in so that you can leave a question or a comment. If you're watching on Facebook, then you must already be logged in, so you can also leave a public comment there as well. And I know I'm excited to hear more from Mario, so let's visit his studio with Zach. Hey guys.
Hello.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us, Ian. And thank you for being here with us, Mario. How's it going?
Thanks, Zach. Yes, and thank you to everybody at the museum for inviting me. All good. Very happy to be here with you guys.
Good. And I love your setup there with a lot of your creations behind you, and we'll talk more about that as we have quite a bit to cover. So let's jump into our slideshow here. And just to start us off, this is one of your pieces of art photographed in our Rivera Court. Can you tell us a little bit about, I guess just start us off with your background, how you got started with this, where you come from, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I'm from Mexico City. I was born and raised in Mexico City, and then I moved to Detroit 8 years ago because of work. I'm a mechanical engineer, so I was working at Ford for almost 12 years between Mexico and the U.S., and now I work for a company called Garrett. And that's my, let's say, one side of my life. The other side is that while I was doing my mechanical engineering degree, I was doing in parallel a certificate in visual arts, and that's basically how I try to professionalize my love for the art and my hobby, I guess, to make these papier-mâché figures. So yes, I did both in parallel, and so since then, that was in 2005. I've been doing these figures, and now I'm still trying to mix both worlds. For some people believe that you either use one side of your brain or the other one. I like to think that we can, just like in everywhere, we can live in, we can live together. And I think that of how my brain works. I like to mix both my mechanical engineering degree and my love for art. So that's who I am.
I was going to ask about that. You mentioned you were an engineer, worked at Ford for a while. Your creations, these Alebrijes, are very structural, this one in particular. Do you find that's helpful, your engineering background, with when you're making these, structures, whether they're smallish like this one or the large scale ones behind you?
Yeah, so it helps a lot, especially because again, we might talk about this later, but there's many things to make these figures. Some people make some people make a structure out of wire. Some people only use some people use wood. Some people use some recyclable things like bottles and some people only use cardboard. Like the people that started this, they are believers that you should only use cardboard. But what helps me is that being an engineer, it gives me a lot of options on materials, what to use for the structure, how to make things like for example, like the bigger figures, how to make them stand up. I like to on the past exhibits at the museum, I like to put projections, so that my background as an engineer helps me to give a different focus to these figures, and also the way I see the world more detail oriented, I guess, because of the work I do, and the geometric figures that I put on the way I paint. So I think that it really affects. I don't know if it affects, but it really adds to my creativity. So I think it's my figures all are a good mix of both worlds.
Oh, that's great. And so we've got another. So yours, you start with wire, correct?
Yes.
And we'll talk about that a little more. But yeah, so the basic steps are, if I have this right, you start with a wire sculpture, add the papier-mâché or cardboard for the features, and then you paint it as well.
Yes. So basically, do you want me to show the figures now, or
we'll get to those in a little bit.
Okay. So yes, basically it's a wire structure. It's a very rough shape, very very square. So you have that wire structure. Then you have to do layers and layers of paper. That in my case I use craft paper, but you can use any type of paper. It's better with a craft or a thinner paper because it absorbs more the engrudo, which is the mix of flour with water. And then you have to put layers and layers and layers. There's different techniques to give volume. You can make it doesn't have to be like a flat layer. You can make like bulks of paper and try to hold them. Some people use tape, to hold the bulk of paper to the wire, and then you put the final layer. So there's many ways, but yes, everything starts with a wire structure, then paper, and then you have to apply like some sort of a sealant that usually is like primer to make sure that the paper doesn't absorb all the picture, all the paint. And then it's all about getting creative and putting in colors what you have in mind, and putting it into the 3D canvas, I would say.
Yeah. Speaking of 3D, I was just curious, do you ever start out 2D? Do you sketch out designs, or do you just start with the wire and see where it takes you?
I sketch them, but just with pen and paper. I've been thinking about using more of a computer-aided design tools, but I would, in my opinion, I think that if I do that, I would be crossing the line of losing my creativity. I thought about that, but so far it's just paper and pen. Just a very rough drawing of what I want to do. And then I let the wire. Sometimes you have to let the wire define the shapes, because sometimes it's you have to keep making them and adjusting. And that's one of the things that I like about these figures, that because they are wire and then paper, and the paper is so flexible, you can put it any way. You have to become very very flexible on the idea that you have. You have to keep evolving the idea and adapting. And at the end, you have it's kind of a really nice reward, because you can see the paper, you can see the draft that you have, and then the final product. And at least in my case, I always feel happier when I see that the final product is different than what I was thinking, because it gives me a sense of success when I see that what I ended up doing is much better than when I started. So that's one of the things that I like about this process of creating.
That's great. So you'll sketch and start with an idea, but you're open to it changing or growing or evolving as you actually get with the materials.
Yes, because even once you have the structure, sometimes let's say the head will be too heavy, and then it's gonna fall. So maybe you have to add an extra leg in the front, so you have to be to keep adapting the design, especially because I like to put. You can see on the pictures, I like to put movement on my figures, so they are always doing something, or like this one is like walking or turning their heads. So sometimes it's impossible to put that in the on paper. Like how the whole piece will interact with wherever I put them on the floor, or if I want to hang them. So sometimes I have to adapt that design. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's great. Let's take a few steps back, and can you tell our audience a little bit of the history of this art form? I think on our next slide we have.
Yeah.
Here.
So basically, the paper mache, as it's known, it's just like the word says. The word was originated in France, but the actual technique comes from China. From thousands of years ago, and it came to Mexico through the colonization. With the European people coming to Mexico, and then it started to evolve into something more Mexican. Taking the technique and mixing it with the Mexican background, and it started having its own character, its own Mexican character. So everything started just before the Alebrijes. Again, people was already making papier-mâché figures, especially this guy Pedro Linares. He was well known for making Judas, and Judas are it's let's say representation of one of the people that used to follow Jesus. And so they were making these figures. They were making piñatas, for example, which were another type of figure that was used by the people from Europe trying to implement the Catholic religion in Mexico. So, for example, the piñatas were made of they were made of paper or with a clay bowl in the beginning, and then with 7 peaks around the bowl, which were made of paper and then decorated with paper. And then from the beginning, they were using the engrudo, which is the flour with the water to put everything together. And the piñatas were representing the 7 deadly sins. And that's how they started introducing the religion to the indigent people in Mexico. So they started making these figures, telling them that the 7 peaks represented the 7 deadly sins, covering their eyes, so they had a faith. So like it was like they would blindfold them, so you hit the 7 capital deadly sins with faith, and then once you break the piñata, you would get a reward. So yes, basically follow the religion, beat the deadly sins, and then at the end get the back then it was fruit, so get the fruit as a reward. So then that evolved. Then we started making Judas, which is a representation of the devil, let's say, and there's a date in Mexico when we burn these figures as well, trying to scare away the devil from our homes, or from depending on the celebration. But so this guy was making these Judas figures, and then from the beginning, many important artists like Frida Kahlo or Diego Rivera, they were interested in these figures, and they collected them from the beginning. And then this guy Pedro Linares, in the 1930s, he got sick, and he was hallucinating, and then on his dreams he saw these crazy figures shouting the name Alebrijes, Alebrijes, Alebrijes. And then he woke up, and then he knew that he had to put them in, that he had to create these figures that he saw on his hallucinations. And that's how, he had the technique before, because he used to make these figures, these Judas figures, and then he used that technique to create this representation of his dreams. And that's how the Alebrijes started. And one thing that it's very important to mention is that the way that he was making the Alebrijes, it's very unique, because again, it's with paper mache, but you could find the similar type of figures also called Alebrijes in different regions of Mexico. The most important are the ones in Mexico City and the ones in Oaxaca, which is in the south of Mexico. And the difference is that the difference is that the ones in Oaxaca are made of wood. It's a very special wood. It's called copal, and it's a very special wood that they use to carve these figures. So it's very it's just the same concept, but the finish of the parts is very different. Both of them really beautiful. Both of them have the same type of colorful paintings. But I guess maybe so just for people to know that both are alebrijes. It's just different techniques depending on the different regions, and that's basically one of the characteristics of the folk art, right? That the region where it starts puts a lot of influence into the design, and that's what happened. Like Mexico City, papier-mâché, Oaxaca, wood carving.
That's great. Have you ever, you do papier-mâché as we've seen, and I think on our next slide we've got another one of your objects. Have you ever tried the wood carving?
To be honest, no. I've tried wood carving, but never to do an alebrije.
Gotcha.
It's I haven't. It's a really I would say that it's maybe because I don't know how to do it, but I would say that it's a really really tough skill to get. No mistakes there, I guess.
Yeah, the papier-mâché and wires a little more forgiving, maybe.
Yeah, so I would say I admire them a lot when they do that, but no, I haven't tried that.
All right, well, this is another of your Alebrijes, and we have a question here. Someone was asking if you could comment on the significance of the dots that you paint, the designs.
Yeah, so to me, again, to me when I'm making these figures, it's not only about the shape, but the detail that I put, and again, my like they mentioned on the comment, my specific, let's say, my style is to do the dotting. I like it a lot because I feel that it represents. So if you see one of my figures, you can tell how complex as a person I am. So it's a really good way to show the people how weird my brain works. Like always thinking. So to me, it's like a way to put in this 3D canvas all the thoughts that go through my mind every day. So it's like it's even like a good relaxing exercise. I feel like every time I put a dot, something, my head gets lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. So it's just a style that I like, but that's how I see it. I see it as a way to put all these thoughts or into something. But it's basically I like to follow geometric patterns because I'm well, one reason is because I'm an engineer, so I'm very square. So I see many things in a square way. But another reason is because at the end of the day, nature is just made of patterns, So I like to keep them real or more tied to the nature with patterns. And again, the dots I just I see them as the representation of all the thoughts that I put into my figures.
Sure. That's great. Yeah, that's a great explanation for it. I was wondering about that, if there was any connection to the engineer side of your brain and that very focused,
Yeah, I think it's part of that, like very, very square. Even if it looks, round and everything, you can see that I follow the same patterns. And I get maybe sometimes I even get upset when that one was difficult because at the beginning I wanted to make both wings the same. And then, like I was telling you, I had to be flexible. I made a mistake somewhere where it didn't match exactly, so I had to make a different thing. And for a long time, it bothered me that it wasn't symmetric, like the two wings. So it's just, and again, I think it's a great question. But yes, I would say yes, that it's just how I see the world and how complex is my thinking process.
That's great. Yeah, this one, I was wondering that too. That was a nice explanation that the wing, I noticed the wings were different, but it's still very beautiful. That's a great explanation of just being, very precise and measured, but also being flexible and willing to go with the flow and make things work. This is a great example of that. And I wanted to mention too, real quick before we move on, a question here about how large are these? Maybe in particular this one. This one, I think there's some. It's sitting on the ledge, right? This one, it almost looks like it's giant and takes up the whole court.
Yeah, this one is
like camera
here next to me.
Oh, yeah.
So you can see that it depends. The size depends. I have ones that are 5 feet tall. This one is this head that is here behind me. It's maybe, I would say, maybe 3 feet tall. So it depends. Here you have another example.
Oh, yeah.
So you can maybe compare with my size, maybe. Yeah. So it depends on the figure, but that's what I see as the beauty of having a wire structure. So for example, like these two, we call them Catrinas, like this one here. It has an aluminum frame. So that's, in my opinion, the beauty of how this technique is so flexible, because at the end you can cover with paper anything. So you can make it. If you are interested on huge alebrijes, just Google monumental alebrijes in Mexico City, and there is a contest to make alebrijes of. There's like 12 feet, 13 feet
Wow.
tall alebrijes. So it's sometimes they even use like a wood frame to make the huge structures, and then cover with the paper. So yes, this can be as small as you want them or as big as you want them. So that's
great. Well, while we've got a few more slides, but while we're talking about frames and scale and stuff, let's maybe just jump right into that if you want to walk us through your process, and then we can circle back around and talking about the ofrendas a little bit.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So here I have an example of how the wire structure starts. So for example, this in the way I see it, it's going to be an octopus eventually. So you see, it's just galvanized wire. That's what I like to use, but it can be any other wire. I like this one because it's really strong, and then you can, depending on the size, you can change the gauge of the wire. Sometimes I would say that for people at their homes that wanted to try this for the first time, maybe use a wire that like a more flexible wire, which doesn't maybe hurt your hands or doesn't require a lot of skill to bend. But then you have to start with a structure of wire. And then on top of this, you can start adding the paper. And as you can see here, I could either put more wire to create like some sort of head, or I can put like a bulk of paper, just paper, and make it like a little ball of paper, and put it on top of this, and then use the engrudo, which again is the flour with water. And again, now that I mentioned that, just if you just type a engrudo recipe, you can find, there's really good videos on YouTube how to make this glue, so that you guys can try making this at home. And then yes, again, you can make a structure, you can put the bulk of wire of paper, and then start covering it with paper. I use here, I'll show you another example. This is bigger, so you can see this is gonna have four wings. This is gonna be a wing, and it's gonna have five legs. So it's gonna be like a spider with wings. and I'm still deciding what kind of head and body I will put. But this is another example of the structure that you guys can have, and again, it can be, you can see the difference in size. You can have this or something my height. So it's and again, you have to adapt the strength of the structure based on the size or the movement that you want to put into your figure. So for example, if you want to have an animal walking looking like it's walking, you have to have maybe 1 foot on the air. So then you have to put more weight on the other three. So you have to think a little bit about that when you make the structure. Then this one, it's a little bit painted because I took it to an event in the Mexican town. The kids, some event for the kids in the Mexican town, and they were trying to help me to make an alebrije. So you will see that this has some paint. It shouldn't be here, but basically, let me remove this. Basically, you have the wire structure. This is going to be an elephant with wings eventually. So you have the structure, and you can see how flat is the structure. You can see that there's no, there's no muscle, there's nothing. It's just like thinking about the bones. And then with the paper, you have to make it look like a real leg, or to look like whatever you want to make it look. So you can see here, it's a nice example because it's totally hollow. So the volume is given by the paper. And then like that, you have to start covering. You have to put many layers of paper, or you can put bulks of paper as well. You can do that. There's people that use different materials. Like let's say that you want to make the head, you can use like a polyester ball. You can put, like, some people use recycled materials like a plastic bottle, and they use that as the structure of their figure, and they cover that with paper. So that's one thing that I love about this technique. For some people, especially like the descendants of Pedro Linares, who started everything with using only cardboard, they feel a little bit against these new trends of using recycled materials or something else than paper. But at the end of the day, the way I see it is just like an artistic representation of, it's your own artistic representation. And having wire, having a piece of plastic inside doesn't change the fact that you are putting your creativity, that you are putting your heart, and that you are, creating something that only you can create. So that's for that reason, I think it's a beautiful technique that allows you to have a lot of flexibility. So once you have this, I want to show you the leg. Just pay attention to the leg, how flat it is, how flat they are at the beginning, and then you can have. You keep going. You keep putting paper. You can have again, for example, in this case, it's gonna be some sort of raccoon with something else, and then you can see that the ears are made of cardboard, just an Amazon box, and then you can see that in this case you can start seeing some let's say muscle into the legs. So you can start seeing some here. Like this, or maybe like this. You can start seeing here the muscle on the legs, and that's just paper, just bunches of paper attached to the wire. And eventually, you can make it look like as defined as this leg. Like this is a much bigger one. This is gonna be a happy kangaroo. So this you can see the shape of the legs, and you just keep adding paper till you feel happy with the result. The less paper you add, you will have more issues like this, where you can see the wire, I don't like that, so I keep adding paper until it looks like like the body, where most of the times we cannot see our own bones. So, but yes, you keep just adding paper. After this step, I usually you can do it, or you don't have to, but you usually put like a layer of primer. And the reason for that is that one reason is because you have to, well, after this is done with the paper, you have to sand it. You sand it with a very light sandpaper, and once it's sanded, you paint it with the primer, and that helps you a lot, because it's just like when you paint a car. Once you put the primer, once you put the paste and then the primer, then you can see all the mistakes. So then you can go back and sand it again, trying to remove all the little mistakes, and then you put another layer of primer, and then that becomes your canvas, depending on the color that you want to put. Usually the way I paint my figures, they are very light colors, so I tend to use a white primer, but you can use gray, you can use white, you can use whatever primer you want, and then from there you use acrylic paints to create the patterns or the figures, or whatever you want to put on the Alebrijes. There is some people now, I don't remember her name, but she's not even from Mexico, she's from Argentina or somewhere in South America, and now she's really, really famous because she's putting like fabrics on her Alebrijes. Like she's doing like she's putting feathers. I've made before an Alebrije which has little it's called Shakira in Mexico, like little pieces that they look like glass, so little pieces on the Alebrije. So there's many ways to make them. So yes, after you have this, it's again, the only limit is your own creativity, and whatever you want to do, it's almost for sure that you can do it. So
that's really great, Mario. Thanks for showing us a few different scales and levels of progress there. Those are obviously very different sizes, from the first small one to the larger kangaroo, but for something in that kind of medium size, how long do you think it would take? Like, how much time do you spend on the wire? How much time do you spend on the papier-mâché?
Yeah, so the wire, it again depends on the structure, but let's put this as an example. Mm-hmm. This would take me maybe an hour to get it done. But like, for example, when you go to something like this, it's more like 3 hours, just because you have to bend the wire. You have to, if you see the wire, it's like two wires together.
Twisted around, yeah.
Twisted around, yes. So that's just to give more strength, mm-hmm. and also to make them totally straight. When you do that, you make the two wires straight, and that's also something that I like, especially on the wings. You want this to be straight, so you have like a clean cut once you put the paper. So I would say the wire, it can be from 1 to 3 hours on the structure for a mid-size Alebrije. Sure. And then with the paper, depending on how you make it, but and depending also on, I guess it's like a car. You can buy a cheap one or a more expensive one. It's both do the same, but it depends how long you want to keep it. So you can put one layer of paper, you can put 50 layers of paper. I like to go to the high quality end. Sure. So let's say with paper, I would say it takes me maybe, I would say, from 10 to 15 hours of paper. And the reason is because it's kind of slow, because once you have the wire structure, at the beginning it's really hard to keep the paper in place while you, for example, to build like the muscles or the first layer around the wire, like making the nose of the elephant. It's really difficult because there's no support and the paper doesn't stick. So you will find a lot of you will have a lot of mistakes like this one where the paper doesn't follow the shape of the nose. So the first layers are usually the most difficult ones. Then after the first 2 layers, it's just about making it look nice and strong.
Yeah.
But yes, between 10, I would say 10, 15 hours to make the paper. And again, that's for the type of alebrijes I make. That's, it doesn't have to be, I don't want people to be scared. You can have one in, 3 hours. That's not a problem. And then the painting, again, is up to you. But I would say that's where I put the most. That's the part that I enjoy the most, and so therefore the part where I put more hours. So it could be. I've had an alebrije where I took me like between 50 and 60 hours of just painting, and of course I don't sit. That's the other reason I have a full-time job. So I do 3 hours a day, and it takes me maybe a month to finish one. So that's the other thing.
And it seems like you maybe always have a few going on too. You might be letting the paper on this one dry, having the undercoat on this one, starting up the wire on this one, tweaking that one.
Yes, so that's maybe that's a good opportunity to mention that, because so just like you say that I make them like in a kind of a small production line. That's how that's one of the characteristics of the folk art, and that's one of the characteristics of this type of art in Mexico. So usually in Mexico, in the south or in the center, in both places work the same. Usually you have like a group of people that cooperate to make these pieces. So you would have, let's say in Oaxaca, you would have somebody that specializes in wood carving, then somebody that specializes in maybe finishing the wood carving, sanding, making everything perfect, and then maybe somebody that specializes in painting, maybe at the beginning of the process somebody that puts together the ideas. So it's basically like a production chain in many, most of them, at least all of the ones that you see in markets, for the people that have traveled to places like Cancun. At the airport, you can see many of these figures at the airport, and that's basically how many of these are made, by a group of people that only do one thing. So let's say that I have my own production line, like you mentioned. But a very slow one, maybe slower than the Model T.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's interesting, because that's another connection to your engineering and automotive background. You're talking about basically an assembly line where I can almost picture these.
Yes,
going down the line and different workers working on different things. And
yes, it's just that I don't have the resources to hire more than me. So
So yes. Well, maybe someday. We did have another comment in the chat too. Someone was asking about if there are classes around. If you know of any, or if you've ever led a class?
I know that there is in Mexico City there is a museum. It's called the Museum of Popular Art. I know that they do some live streams just like this one with some courses, but courses like local courses or in person. I'm not aware of any of them here. I know that there are in Mexico, but I'm not aware of any here. If I know a few in Mexico, so if anybody wants to contact me, or I can let you know where to find it in Mexico City. And here I don't know any, but if maybe one day we can have one, and I would be happy to share how these are made with all the people of from Michigan.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, and hopefully we'll be back in person next October, if not sooner, and we'll have some hands-on making at the museum. Speaking of the museum, and speaking of assembly line, we wanted to jump back to our slideshow for a moment. And this was the lovely background where all of your photos from earlier were taken. These are, of course, Diego Rivera's murals, one of the gems of the museum, in my opinion. And Mario, you were sharing earlier that Diego and Frida collected Alebrijes, right?
Yes, so that's one of the reasons why I like to take the pictures of my figures at that specific place, because one of the things that made me happier when I moved to Michigan was to see like you said, one of the gems of the museum. To me, one of the most important places in Detroit. Having something painted by a not only something, but like this type, like which can be his best, like his masterpiece in Detroit. So that's one of the things that made me really proud as not only as an artist but as a Mexican. It made me really proud to see this type of work here. And the reason why I also love these murals and I love Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo is because they were ones of the first promoters of this type of art. So even before Pedro Linares got sick, and even before he came up with this word Alebrijes, he was already making these Judas figures, like the one that you have on the right. That beautiful picture that you have with Frida and Diego hugging a Judas. So Pedro Linares was already making these figures, so he knew the technique. He had all the skills, and Frida and Diego were some of his fans, and they enjoyed buying these figures. In fact, you can still if you ever go to Mexico City, you cannot miss the Frida Kahlo house, which is called the Blue House, and the Diego Rivera house, which now is called an Aguacali Museum. And in both places, you can see figures made of papier-mâché, but especially in the Diego's house, you can see his personal collection of Alebrijes, most of them made by Pedro Linares. So that's why I really love this part of the museum, because it not only connects with my Mexican heritage, but also with my love to these papier-mâché figures. And then to me it's great to see that two artists like of the caliber of these two guys, Diego Rivera and Frida, appreciated that kind of art and have basically loved this type of art and have their own personal collection.
Yeah, that's definitely something that's always really interesting to learn about. Everyone has their favorite artists or the artists they recognize, but it's really interesting when you kind of take a step back and look at, well, what were those artists not just inspired by or influenced by, but what did they genuinely love and collect and keep in their homes?
Yes, because also it's very nice because it wasn't it wasn't anything to show a status. I'm sure that they had enough money to buy a piece from anyone else in Europe, let's say. But this really shows that they loved this type of art, and that they were willing to have it, like you said, on their homes, where many politicians and people from all over the world, because especially these two guys were kind of into the politics. So places where people from all other places used to come, and that's what they wanted to show, right? That basically at home you want to show what you love. So they had this as part of their houses. So it's really beautiful to see that, and it makes me very happy every time I go to the museum to sit there and know that if he would appreciate not only what I do, but what all the Mexican artists and not only Mexican, but all the people who make papier-mâché figures do, that to know that he would appreciate that. So,
which I think is one of the great, you're touching on one of the great things about this type of folk art and many types of folk art, is that you're part of that long lineage, that long history of this tradition. And while those traditions might change slightly, it can all kind of be traced back. And you've done a really great job explaining how worldwide this tradition connects to. But I wanted to point out, yeah, this picture on the left of their collection, this is actually a photo from the DIA's collection. And just one thing I wanted to point out real quick for anyone watching, if you go to dia.org and click on art, you can search through the museum's collection and find some really great gems of things that aren't up on the walls, like this photo and our next couple slides here. Just a couple more drawings from Diego. These were on display a few years ago, but it's very rare that they make it out of storage because they're on paper and they're very fragile. But I just love these drawings, just kind of showing a different side. And then the next slide here, we have some of his actual sketches that are also rarely on display of the industry murals. And these are just beautiful to see the like we've talked about with your work, Mario, those early stages of planning and sketching and changing as you go. It's really great to see these early steps of some of the images from the murals. So if you have some time, I'd recommend, snooping around the dia.org art section. You can find some really great stuff. And we've got about 15 minutes here. If you have any last comments or questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But we wanted to wrap up, Mario, and talk about one of the recent-ish traditions at the DIA is our annual Ofrenda exhibition that you've participated in several of the past years. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so in Mexico, one of the most important traditions is the Day of the Dead, which is celebrated, November 1st and 2nd. So November 1st is supposed to be for the young souls, so like kids or babies that passed away, and the 2nd is for the adults. And it's a very beautiful tradition because of the religious background of the country. We believe that our dead ones come to visit us during those 2 days, and this is not something that we do. Not in the level of the ofrendas that are displayed at the museum, but it can be as simple as a glass of water and a piece of bread. Maybe that's, or maybe your grandfather used to love tequila, so you only put like a bottle of tequila and maybe some food. So it can be as simple as that. But the meaning or the belief that they will come that day to visit you, it's something that in Mexico you grow up with that feeling. And when I was a kid, I remember my mom putting always a glass of water and food and everything. And now I know that it was because the water was evaporating and it was hot maybe, and of course there's gonna be less water the next day than the day when she put the water. But it was really cool as a kid to wake up and see less water on the glass, So somebody came, and somebody, maybe my grandfather came and had some water. So it was really cool to grow up like that. And from your house, again, which can be a really, really small ofrenda, then you have to the cemeteries, which are beautiful. The decorations that they put, I would say, there is a place called to Mexico City called Mixquic. There is a place in Michoacan called Janitzio. It's an island in the middle of a lake, and they have some of the most beautiful decorations on the cemeteries, which, like you can see on that picture, are all yellow because of the marigolds, which is like the most important piece of decoration of all the ofrendas. So it's really beautiful to go to the cemeteries and see them all yellow with this like the mix of that yellow flower with the candles. It gives you it gives you peace for some reason. At least that's how I feel it, and hopefully you guys can experience it one day. So like the original ofrendas in Mexico at the cemeteries. So, but this specific ofrenda, which was at the DIA a couple of years ago, which it's like a more modern representation, or the way that I see the tradition. It was like my personal way to see the tradition. Of course, keeping the basic elements like the marigolds, and it was to me like a door to the other world, whatever you believe. Whatever you believe, it's heaven or whatever you believe. It was a door welcoming you with the marigolds and the Lady of the Death, which is here to my left. Waiting for you with some flowers. And then on the back I had all these alebrijes, which again, like I mentioned before, they are the result of a guy hallucinating, but that belief has evolved so much and so far out of the Mexican culture that now you can see that type of representation on Disney movies, right? Like Coco,
right.
Where now the alebrijes are used as well as spiritual guides. And again, it might not be a spiritual guide, but it's like I told you at the beginning. I do the dots because that represents me, and somehow it's something that it's me, and it might be my spiritual guide because it's a part of me, and it represents a part of me. So it's that's, for example, one thing that I wanted to represent on that ofrenda. But at the museum and at the exhibit, you can find that's one of the things that I find really, really cool and beautiful about this exhibition, that you have from this exhibition was the last year, and it's also one that I did last year. But you can find something like this, more, let's say, a modern adaptation of the tradition to a really, really let's say a traditional exhibit where sometimes you have different levels of different levels which represent like the heaven, like the real world, and then the hell, and different worlds, different items like food, the candles, personal items that you want the other person to remember. So that's one of the beauties of this exhibit, that it really, really shows and helps you to following the same tradition, put your personal touch, and all of them are really beautiful and touching. Once you read all the comments and the inspiration that people have, it's really, really beautiful what all these ofrendas represent. So I encourage you to go to the museum, visit these ofrendas, and really read into what they say on the description of the ofrenda, and try to think about the feelings of the person making that ofrenda, and how much he was missing the person who that is dedicated for, or the motive. Because, for example, in my ofrendas, I try to make them more let's say with topics more like topics that are happening now. For example, that ofrenda was it was supposed to represent a guy on a market, which when we went through the pandemic, in many places like Mexico, like India, the economy is not as good as in the US. You have more informal economy. So people have to go out and sell their stuff on the street. They have to risk their lives because otherwise they don't eat. So for example, that was kind of the representation of this ofrenda, to honor all the people that died on doing informal or being part of the informal economy. So yes, you can have a topic as deep or dense or polemic as that, or you can honor your grandmother or your father, or whoever, your loved one, whoever he or she is. So
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about that exhibit and why it's does so well every year, because it's part of this great tradition, and the art form is very traditional and it's part of this long history, but also the individual subject matters of each piece are so varied and are so unique, and there's so many ways to, just like you said, you can make it something very personal, which I think everyone can relate to, or it can be about these sort of bigger universal topics and issues. And it's always a really great mix of that. Sometimes you'll see them tied to something in the news, tied to an artist, tied to a family member. There's quite a bit, quite a bit. So we've got, this is yours from last year as well.
Yeah. So this is like 2 years ago. Unfortunately, this year I was not able to participate. I made my best Alebrijes so far, which is my daughter. So I'm dedicating a little bit more of time to her this year, but next year for sure I'm gonna come back not only to the museum but also next year I'm planning to have an exhibit on a gallery around in Metro Detroit somewhere, or Detroit, but somewhere here. So next year I'll be back, exhibiting my figures. So hopefully all of you guys can come and visit and we can talk. And
good plug there, Mario. Yeah, we did get a question. Someone asked, do you show your work in a gallery? So that's a great answer. That it sounds like you're going to be working on building up your collection. We can see quite a bit behind you. We've seen some stuff in progress, so that's great. And we did have your website and your Instagram handy, I think, where folks can find more of your work and keep tabs on what you're up to, and I'm sure you'll provide updates.
I think I can mention it is Alebrijes by MAM, MAMM. So that's .com. Yes, it's there on the.
And we'll put that in the chat as well, so folks can just click onto it. And then I did want to mention real quick, speaking of Ofrendas in this exhibition, and while you weren't able to participate this year, sounds like you got your hands full. This year's Ofrendas exhibition is up in the museum. You can go check it out. It's up until November 7th, which is a Sunday, so you've got exactly 1 month. The museum is expanding its hours back to Tuesdays being open and late on Fridays again. So check out our website for more information about that. But I highly recommend going to see it. There's the comments there. Thank you so much, Mario. Any last comments?
No, just to thank you, and again, anyone listening to the video or watching us, if you are interested in making these figures, or somebody wants to learn, I'll be happy to work with you. That's not a problem, and hopefully next year I'll see you guys somewhere in Detroit, with all my friends here.
Great. Thank you so much, Mario. Great chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Take care.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate all the comments and questions, and loved. I liked seeing Mario's work just as much as all of you. I think it's been a real pleasure planning this with him and getting to know him and learning more about his work. Tune in next Thursday. We have Asian Art Part 2 next Thursday at 1 o'clock. And I want to say thank you to Ian and Amanda behind the scenes for helping us out. We couldn't do this without them. And thanks all of you for joining in. Have a great rest of your week.